me tell you about the night a bomber ran out of sky and fuel over California and kept flying without anyone in it, with 2 hydrogen bombs strapped to its belly. We're in March 1961. The Cold War is humming quietly in the background, and Strategic Air Command is doing what it does every day, sending bombers into the air to prove they can stay there, ready if the order ever comes. This particular airplane is a Boeing B-52F Stratofortress. 8 engines, swept wings, designed to carry nuclear weapons halfway around the world. On this mission, she lifts off from Mather Air Force Base near Sacramento, loaded with 2 Mark 39 thermonuclear bombs, each one in the multi-megaton class, the same basic family as the bomb that nearly went off in Goldsboro, North Carolina. It's meant to be a long endurance flight, part training, part real nuclear alert, like a rehearsal for World War III. At first, everything looks normal. The B-52 climbs out, levels off around 33,000 feet, settles into that high cruise over the western United States, 8 engines droning, crew strapped into their stations, checklists flowing the way they always do. And then, something starts to feel wrong. Up in the upper crew compartment, the air coming out of the vents starts getting hotter. At first, it's just uncomfortable, like someone turned the heat up too high. But then, it gets worse. The temperature climbs and keeps climbing. 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 110, heading toward 125 degrees, and more. The cockpit becomes an oven. Instrument glass starts to crack from thermal stress. Metal panels get too hot to touch. The crew's flight suits are soaked with sweat, faces flushed, breathing heavy just from the heat. They try to fix it in the air. They adjust environmental controls, switch packs on and off, talk to ground controllers at Mather over the radio, describe the problem. The answer they get, again and again, is basically, continue the mission as long as you can. See if it stabilizes. Keep us updated. On paper, that's maintaining alert coverage. In the cockpit, it's 8 men slowly baking at 33,000 feet. Hours go by. The heat won't quit. Finally, after about 14 hours of flying, the outside pane of the pilot's side window just gives up. A loud crack, a spiderweb of broken glass, and now the flight deck isn't just roasting hot, it's structurally compromised. The crew knows what that means. They can't keep the cabin pressurized with that kind of damage, and they can't stay up at 30,000+ feet without pressurization. Not for long. So they do the only thing they can. They depressurize and start a descent, down through the cold March sky over Northern California, aiming for around 12,000 feet, low enough that the air is thick enough to breathe, even in an unpressurized cockpit. The heat problem eases a little as they get lower, but a new problem starts looming over them. Fuel. A B-52 at 33,000 feet on long-range cruise can sip fuel for hours and hours. A B-52 slogging along at 12,000 feet in thicker air burns a lot more. Add to that, route changes for weather, small course deviations, and the fact that one of the main tank fuel gauges has started acting suspicious, and suddenly the question, do we have enough to get home, is no longer hypothetical. They call Mather, again, this time not about heat, but about fuel. The answer now is, okay, we'll get you a tanker. Somewhere to the north, from another base, a KC tanker is launched. They plan a rendezvous near the Red Bluff VOR, a radio beacon in Northern California. The idea is simple on paper. The bomber and the tanker will converge, meet, link up, transfer fuel, And then the B-52 can limp home to Mather with its 2 hydrogen bombs still safely in the bay. But bad luck and physics aren't done with them yet. The B-52 is now low on fuel and flying low in thick air. Its engines are thirsty, and they can't push it to high cruise speeds without burning what little they have left. The tanker pilot pulls his big refueling jet back as slow as he safely can, trying to let the buff catch up from behind on the refueling track. On radar and charts, they're getting closer. In the real sky, it's not enough. The crew in the B-52 can see their fuel figures dropping, see the distance shrinking, but not fast enough. Then comes the moment every pilot dreads. One engine, then another, and another. They flame out. 8 engines, starved of fuel, go silent. At around 7,000 feet over rural Sutter County, California, the Stratofortress becomes a heavy glider. The aircraft commander has been thinking about this moment for a while. He knows where they are, he knows where the towns are, and he knows what's in the bomb bay. 2 Mark 39 hydrogen bombs, each in the multi-megaton range. He swings the nose, away from more populated areas, toward open farmland west of Yuba City, barley fields, orchards, irrigation canals. Then he makes the call no bomber crew ever wants to hear. Prepare to bail out. The crew has rehearsed this, but rehearsals are one thing. Standing in a dying bomber with no engines is another. At around 7,000 feet, they start going. One by one, the navigator, the spare navigator, the radar navigator, the electronic warfare officer, the spare pilot, the co-pilot. They grab parachutes, move to their assigned exits, jump into the cold air. The tail gunner has his own nightmare. The design says his turret can jettison and he can bail out to the rear. But when he tries, nothing happens. The emergency jettison system fails. So he has to scramble forward through the pressurized tunnel toward the front of the jet and grab a spare chute. Then join the bailout line, jumping through a hatch into slipstream meant for someone else. It's chaos, but controlled chaos. Men tumble into the open sky over the flat grid of the Sacramento Valley, chutes snapping open, white canopies blossoming in the late day light. At around 4,000 feet, the pilot is still at the controls. He has trimmed the aircraft, set it in as stable a glide as he can, aimed away from houses toward open fields. There is nothing more he can do from inside. He grabs his parachute, pulls on the harness, and bails out last. Now the B-52, with 2 live hydrogen bombs in its bay, is alone. No pilot, no crew, no one in the seats. Just a big, empty strategic bomber silently gliding over California. Because of the trim setting and the long, efficient wings, it doesn't just fall out of the sky. It settles into a shallow descent like a giant paper airplane. Calculations later show a glide ratio of something like 21:1. For every 1,000 feet it drops, it can travel miles forward. In fact, the unmanned bomber makes almost a full, gentle turn, a wide 360-degree arc over fields and orchards, as if it's searching for a place to land. On the ground below, farmers look up from their tractors. People driving rural roads glance at this big silver shape overhead, not knowing the crew is already gone and what's sitting in the belly. Finally, inevitably, gravity wins. The ghost bomber sinks down toward a barley field about 15 miles west of Yuba City. It hits hard. The fuselage breaks, Wings tear, engines shear off, fuel lines and structure shatter, and deep inside the bomb bay, the racks fail. Both Mark 39 bombs are ripped from their mounts. They're thrown into the wreckage zone, still inside or partly inside their protective ballistic cases, slammed into dirt, bent, broken. But they do not detonate conventionally. There is no fireball, no city-killing blast, no mushroom cloud over Northern California. But what happens inside those broken weapon casings matters. Later, when weapons experts and investigators open up those Mark 39s, what they find is both reassuring and deeply unsettling. These bombs are not exactly the same as Goldsboro's. They've been updated, fitted with a sealed pit design, and a newer arm/safe switch called the MC-1288. That switch is supposed to prevent a nuclear detonation unless it has been deliberately moved to arm and a full sequence of arming steps has been completed. In both weapons, after the crash, that switch is still in safe. That's the good news. But when they look deeper, they see how far the bombs tried to go on their own. In one bomb, the external case is battered but mostly intact. The pull-out rods, little mechanical devices that normally get pulled during a proper drop, have been yanked by the forces of the crash. As if the bomb thought it had been released in a real drop. Inside, a low-voltage thermal battery has activated, probably because a cable was shorted or crushed just right in the impact. That battery powers internal logic, timers, firing circuitry. Some of those systems ticked forward. The internal timer actually started. The tritium reservoir, a small canister that helps boost the weapon's power, was torn loose, but still intact and full. The high explosives that normally compress the nuclear core were cracked, crumbled, mangled. In the other bomb, the casing is even more badly destroyed. The primary and much of the secondary have been thrown out of the case. Explosive lenses shattered, detonators scattered across the field. The enriched uranium pit, the actual heart of the primary, is separated from the rest of the assembly. Again, the arm/safe switch has never been turned to arm. The high-voltage battery hasn't fired. But the pattern is clear. Mechanical shock, cable damage, and random forces pushed parts of at least one weapon partway through its arming sequence without anyone ever touching the controls. Explosive ordnance disposal teams from nearby bases, Beale, McClellan, move in quickly. They set up cordons in the fields, carefully locate both bombs and every scattered piece they can find. They pull the tritium reservoirs, remove the separated pit, collect all the shattered high explosive, and, after rendering it safe, burn it in controlled pits further away. Nuclear components go back into shielded containers and eventually into the custody of the Atomic Energy Commission. On the human side, amazingly, every crew member who bailed out survives. Some land hard in orchards or near levees. A few are injured, but they live. But the accident still takes a life. A firefighter, racing toward the crash site in a responding vehicle, dies in a traffic accident on the way. Other responders are hurt in that same wreck. When the dust settles, the official line is as familiar as it is comforting. There was no nuclear detonation, no significant release of radioactive material. The safety systems worked. Technically, they're right. The arm/safe switches never went to arm. The high-voltage firing circuits never came alive. The bombs did not explode conventionally, and California did not lose a county to a man-made sun.
The safety systems worked.
But for engineers, and for people who study these things, the Yuba City crash becomes another quiet warning. Because in that barley field, you had two multi-megaton thermonuclear weapons subjected to enormous shock, crushing, twisting, and random electrical faults. And in at least one of them, some of the internal safeguards were pushed partway along the path toward ready by nothing more than chance and impact forces. The only reason it didn't go further was because one particular switch stayed in one particular position, and because enough explosive material was too damaged to function as designed. For the guys who flew in Strategic Air Command, this incident was one of those stories that didn't make big headlines, but stuck in the back of their minds. A bomber that overheated itself nearly to death, was forced down low, ran out of fuel trying to meet a tanker, and became a ghost plane, gliding over farmland with nobody on board, 2 hydrogen bombs along for the ride. And all of that ended, not with a bright flash over a city, but with a broken fuselage in a field. EOD techs on their knees in the dirt, picking up the pieces, and silent relief that the worst-case scenario stayed just that, a scenario. When we talk about nuclear safety, we like to imagine neat diagrams, checklists, fail-safe systems that work exactly the way they're drawn. The Yuba City crash is a reminder that in the real world, machines overheat, gauges stick, leaders push missions a little too far, and even the best safety switch is still just a physical object, riding inside a bomb, inside an airplane, falling out of the sky. Sometimes, all that stands between training mission and national catastrophe is a handful of human decisions and a few pieces of hardware that happen to hold when everything else breaks.